Jack Morris wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped off the loading dock of the merchant vessel, Wandering Star. After 12 hours of fixing broken fuel lines and patching coolant leaks, his hands were stained with grease and his blue jumpsuit was spotted with various fluids. Still he smiled. The ship had docked at Outpost Epsilon for a 48-hour supply stop, which meant he had some free time. "Hey, Jack, we're heading to the Neon District. You coming?" shouted Pete, one of the cargo handlers, already halfway, down the corridor with a group of laughing crewmates. Jack shook his head. "Maybe later. Want to look around the markets first?" "Your loss," Pete called back, his voice fading as the group turned a corner. Unlike his fellow crew members who always rushed to the bars and entertainment zones whenever they docked, Jack preferred exploring. At 26, he was one of the youngest mechanics on the ship, and his curiosity often led him to places others avoided. Outpost Epsilon was one of the busiest trade hubs at the edge of human space. Built into a small asteroid, the station had grown over decades into a maze of corridors, chambers, and tunnels. The main levels housed official businesses, clean shops, and respectable establishments. But Jack was more interested in the lower markets where traders from a dozen alien species sold strange goods from across the galaxy. After a quick shower and change into civilian clothes, worn jeans and a simple gray t-shirt, Jack made his way down through the levels. The further he descended, the more the station changed. Clean white corridors gave way to narrow passages with exposed pipes and flickering lights. The air grew thicker, filled with unfamiliar smells, spicy foods, exotic incense, and the particular odors of species whose biology humans still didn't fully understand. Jack wandered through crowded stalls, fascinated by items he couldn't even identify. He paused at a booth selling mechanical parts, many obviously salvaged from crashed ships. The vendor, a reptilian Draxian with copper scales, watched him with 4 yellow eyes. "You have good eye, human," the vendor said in broken standard. "This part, very rare, from old Earth ship, pre-war." Jack smiled politely but moved on. The part was just a standard power coupling, common on any ship, and definitely not pre-war. He'd learned to recognize the small scams that were part of market life. As he turned down a narrower side passage, the crowd thinned. This area seemed less prosperous, with fewer lights and closed stalls. Jack was about to turn back when he noticed something in a shadowy corner. A small figure sat huddled against a wall, wrapped in what looked like tattered rags. Even in the dim light, Jack could see that the being wasn't human. Its skin had a blue-green tint that seemed to catch what little light there was with an iridescent glow, though the effect was dull, as if faded. Jack paused, watching as other market-goers walked past the figure. Some glanced at the alien and quickly looked away. Others made strange gestures, warning signs, Jack realized. One vendor nearby spat on the ground after passing. Curious, Jack approached the alien. Up close, he could see intricate patterns on its skin, swirls and lines that seemed to shift slightly, pulsing with a weak light. The alien's face was mostly hidden by a hood, but Jack could see large almond-shaped eyes that reflected light like opals. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, crouching down. The alien looked up, clearly surprised that someone had stopped. Jack noticed, now that she, he thought, though he wasn't sure how he knew, was trembling slightly. "I survive," she said in halting standard. Her voice had a musical quality, like wind chimes. "Do you need help?" Jack asked. "Food? Medicine?" A vendor from a nearby stall called out sharply in a language Jack didn't understand. When Jack looked over, the vendor, a burly human with a thick beard, switched to standard. "Leave it alone, boy. Those kinds bring bad luck. Everyone knows that." Jack frowned. "What kinds?" "Wanderers," the man said with disgust. "Thieves and tricksters. They pretend to be weak, then rob you blind." Jack turned back to the alien, who had shrunk further into herself at the man's words. He noticed now how thin her arms were, how her chest rose and fell with what seemed like painful effort. "When did you last eat?" he asked quietly. The alien made a gesture that Jack didn't understand. She pulled out a small device from her rags, a standard translator but an old model with a cracked screen. She pressed it, and a mechanical voice said, 3 station cycles, no credits, no food compatible. Jack stood up. Wait here. He walked to a food stall he'd passed earlier, one that advertised all species catered for. The owner, a cheerful woman with bright pink hair, helped him select something suitable for the alien's biology. This stuff's expensive, she warned as she packed a container. Most species from the outer rim have complex dietary needs. Jack winced at the price but handed over his credits anyway. He added a bottle of what the owner assured him was universal hydration fluid, safe for most known species. When he returned, to the alien her eyes widened with surprise. Jack handed her the food container and drink, then sat down beside her. My name's Jack. Jack Morris, he said as she carefully opened the container. I'm a mechanic on the Wandering Star. The alien looked at him for a long moment, then pointed to herself. Nixara, she said, the apostrophe a clicking sound Jack couldn't hope to replicate. She ate slowly, with deliberate care. As she did, Jack noticed her breathing seemed to become more regular. The patterns on her skin brightened slightly. Thank you, she said, her standard slightly better now, as if the food had given her strength. Most pass by, why help? Jack shrugged. You needed it. Nixara studied him, her head tilted slightly. Need more than food, she admitted after a moment. She pulled out a small device from inside her rags, an environmental regulator, Jack realized. The kind worn by species who couldn't tolerate standard station atmospheres. Broken, she explained. 3 days. Hard to breathe now. Jack took the device carefully. It was an older model, but the basic design was similar to the atmospheric processors he worked with on the ship. After examining it for a few minutes, he identified the problem: a clogged filter and a loose connection. Using the small toolkit he always carried in his pocket, Jack set to work. The vendor who had warned him earlier walked past again, muttering something about foolish young men. Jack ignored him, focusing on the delicate mechanisms. 20 minutes later, the regulator hummed to life, its indicator light turning from red to a healthy green. Nixara took it with reverent care and attached it to her tattered garment. Almost immediately, her posture improved as the device began adjusting the air she breathed. Life debt, she said solemnly. How repay? She reached inside her rags and pulled out a small object, a piece of what looked like carved stone with strange symbols etched into its surface. She offered it to Jack. He shook his head. Keep it. I don't need payment. Nixara's eyes widened, the opalescent light in them shimmering. She slowly withdrew the object, studying Jack with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. Before you go, Jack said, pulling out his emergency communicator. He showed her how to input his personal code. If you need help again, you can reach me when I'm in range. He stood up, aware that his shore leave time was running short. Be careful, okay? Nixara nodded slowly. You too, Jack Morris. Universe has ears and eyes. Small acts echo far. The cryptic statement made Jack smile. It was exactly the kind of mysterious thing he'd expect from a strange alien in a space station's lower markets. He gave her a small wave and turned back toward the main corridor, already thinking about the repair job waiting for him back on the ship. He didn't look back to see Nixara touch the stone object to her forehead, nor did he notice the way the patterns on her skin flared with sudden brilliant light before fading back to their dull glow. By then, Jack was already lost in the crowd, just another human mechanic going about his day, completely unaware that he had just changed the course of galactic history. 3 months passed quickly for Jack Morris aboard the Wandering Star. The merchant vessel continued its regular route between human colonies, carrying cargo and passengers through the busy lanes of space. Life fell into a comfortable rhythm of work shifts, card games with fellow crew members, and the occasional shore leave on different stations. Something had changed for Jack, though. After his encounter with Nixara, he found himself solving mechanical problems with surprising ease. Ideas came to him that he'd never considered before, as if a new part of his brain had awakened. Captain Lisa Brown noticed his improved skills and promoted him to senior mechanic when the previous one left for a job on Earth. "You've got a gift, Morris," she told him after he fixed a navigation system that 3 other mechanics had declared hopeless. "Never seen anyone understand machines like you do." Jack just smiled and shrugged. He couldn't explain how he suddenly knew that the tertiary power coupling needed to be reversed, or how he'd figured out that the navigation computer would work if he bypassed 2 circuits that no training manual said were connected. The knowledge simply appeared in his mind when he needed it. The Wandering Star docked at Nova Seattle, one of Earth's largest orbital stations, for scheduled maintenance and crew rotation. The massive station housed over 50,000 permanent residents and tens of thousands more visitors at any given time. Its upper levels were devoted to luxury apartments, diplomatic quarters, and high-end shopping districts. Jack and his fellow crew members were assigned temporary quarters in the middle levels, comfortable but not fancy. On his second day of leave, Jack's personal communicator chimed with a message alert. The small device rarely made that sound. Most of his friends were aboard the ship and just found him in person, and his parents on Earth preferred video calls scheduled in advance. The message contained no words, only a string of numbers, coordinates within the station, and a simple geometric pattern that shifted and pulsed with faint light on his screen. Jack frowned, studying the pattern. It seemed familiar somehow, triggering a memory he couldn't quite place. Then it hit him. The pattern matched the markings he'd seen on Nixara's skin 3 months ago at Outpost Epsilon. "Everything okay?" Allison Kent asked, glancing up from her coffee. The navigation officer had joined the crew just a month ago, and she and Jack had become fast friends. They were sitting in a small cafe with a view of Earth through a large viewport. "Yeah," Jack said slowly, still staring at his communicator. "Just a weird message." He showed her the screen. Allison studied it for a moment, then raised an eyebrow. "Coordinates for the Diamond District. That's where all the ambassadors and rich folks stay." She pointed to the geometric pattern. "And what's this fancy design supposed to be?" "It's hard to explain," Jack said. "I think I know who sent it." Allison sipped her coffee. "Someone's playing a joke on you. Regular crew like us can't even get into the Diamond District without special clearance." Jack nodded, but something told him this wasn't a joke. "I think I'll check it out anyway." "Your funeral?" Allison said with a grin. "If security picks you up, don't expect me to bail you out." 2 hours later, dressed in his cleanest non-uniform clothes, dark pants and a navy button-up shirt, Jack stood before an elevator that would take him to the Diamond District. A bored-looking security guard in a crisp uniform watched him approach. "ID. And clearance, please," the guard said, not bothering to look up from his screen. Jack swallowed hard. "I don't have clearance. I received a message with coordinates. No clearance, no entry," the guard interrupted. "Move along." Jack pulled out his communicator and showed the message. "Can you at least check if this is legitimate?" The guard sighed but glanced at the screen. His bored expression instantly changed to one of surprise. "Wait here," he said, suddenly alert. He stepped away and spoke quietly into his communication device. Jack shifted nervously from foot to foot, wondering if he should just leave. Before he could decide, the guard returned with another more senior-looking officer. "Jack Morris?" the new officer asked, his voice formal. "Yes, that's me. Please follow me." Jack followed the officer into the elevator, which required a special key card to operate. As they ascended to the Diamond District, Jack's stomach tightened with anxiety. Had he broken some rule? Was he in trouble? When the doors opened, Jack stepped into a world he'd only seen in videos. The corridor was wide and lined with real plants. The lighting was soft but natural-seeming, unlike the harsh fluorescence of the lower levels. The air even smelled different, cleaner, with a hint of something like flowers. The officer led him through several turns, passing well-dressed people who gave them curious glances. Finally, they stopped before a door marked with an unfamiliar symbol. "You're expected," the officer said, gesturing to a small panel beside the door. Jack placed his palm on the panel, and the door slid open silently. The officer didn't follow as Jack cautiously stepped inside. The room beyond was spacious and elegant, with high ceilings and large windows showing a spectacular view of Earth. Soft music played from hidden speakers, and the lighting shifted gently through calming colors. "Jack Morris," a familiar musical voice said. "You came." Jack turned to see a figure standing by the window. For a moment he didn't recognize her. This couldn't be the same frail alien he'd helped in the dirty corner of Outpost Epsilon. Nyxera stood tall now, her posture straight and confident. The tattered rags were gone, replaced by flowing garments that seemed to be made of liquid silver. The patterns on her blue-green skin glowed brightly, shifting in complex designs that somehow reminded Jack of star maps. "Nyxera?" he asked uncertainly. She smiled, her opalescent eyes catching the light. "You remember good. You look different," Jack said, struggling to find words. "I am restored," she replied. "Thanks to you." Jack noticed they weren't alone. Several other aliens stood nearby, watching him closely. They were the same species as Nyxera, with similar patterned skin, though none glowed as brightly as hers. They wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor, and Jack suddenly realized they were guards. "I don't understand," Jack said. "What are you doing here? How did you get access to a place like this?" Nyxera gestured to a comfortable-looking chair. "Please sit. There is much to explain." Jack sat and Nyxera took a seat across from him. The guards remained standing, their expressions unreadable. "I was not truthful with you when we met," Nyxera began. "Not completely. You weren't just a beggar," Jack guessed. She made a sound like gentle wind chimes. Laughter, Jack realized. "No," she confirmed. "I am Nyxera Valsheen, Crown Princess of the Vexari Conclave." Jack stared at her. "Princess?" he repeated weakly. "My people are not known to yours," she continued. "We have remained hidden for many of your centuries, observing but not engaging with the galactic community." One of the guards stepped forward and spoke rapidly in a language Jack couldn't understand. The sounds were like music, rising and falling. In complex patterns, Nyxera responded in the same language, her tone firm. The guard bowed slightly and stepped back. "My security chief believes I am sharing too much," she explained to Jack, "but you have earned the right to know." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "When you found me, I was completing the pilgrimage of humility, a sacred tradition for all who would lead our people. We must experience life without privilege or power to understand the struggles of the common people. But you were dying," Jack said, remembering her labored breathing and the broken environmental regulator. Nyxera's expression darkened. "My escort was attacked by assassins from a rival house. They left me for dead, taking my emergency beacon. I was stranded with damaged equipment and no way to contact my people." Jack felt a chill at how close she had come to death in that dirty corner. "Why didn't you tell someone who you were? Surely the station authorities would not have believed me," Nyxera finished. "Without my royal symbols or means of verification, I was just another vagrant alien to them, and my people have many enemies who would have finished what the assassins started." She stood and walked to a small table, picking up an object that Jack recognized, the carved stone she had offered him. "This is the royal sigil of the Vexari," she said, holding it up. The symbols etched into its surface glowed with inner light. "Only those of royal blood can activate its power. Had you taken it, my guards would have found you within days." "But I didn't take it," Jack pointed out. "No." Nyxera's eyes seemed to glow brighter. "You refused payment for your kindness. You helped me simply because I needed help. Do you know how rare that is, Jack Morris, how precious?" Jack shrugged, uncomfortable with her intensity. Anyone would have done the same. "But they did not," she said simply. "Many passed by. Only you stopped. Only you helped." She returned to her seat, the sigil still in her hand. "There is more. Your actions fulfill an ancient prophecy among my people. One that speaks of a worthy outsider who would help the hidden, err without knowledge of their identity or hope of reward." Jack laughed nervously. "I'm no part of any prophecy. I'm just a mechanic. A mechanic who can now solve problems beyond his training," Nixara said quietly. Have you not noticed changes in your ability since our meeting? Jack fell silent, remembering the strange insights that had earned him his promotion. Jack paced back and forth in Captain Lisa Brown's private quarters, explaining the unbelievable situation for the third time. The captain sat behind her desk, her expression growing more serious with each passing minute. Let me get this straight, she said, running a hand through her short gray hair. That alien you helped 3 months ago turns out to be a princess of some secret civilization, and now she wants you to be the first human to visit their hidden planet? That's about it, Jack confirmed, stopping his pacing to look out the small viewport at Nova Seattle's busy docking area. I know it sounds crazy. Captain Brown tapped her fingers on the desk thoughtfully. Actually, it explains a few things. We received a strange communication this morning. Someone offered to hire the entire ship for a special mission at 10 times our normal rate. Jack turned to her in surprise. The Vexari? The message didn't say, just that it involved a diplomatic matter of the highest importance. She fixed Jack with a steady gaze. I thought it was a prank, now I'm not so sure. The captain stood and walked to a small cabinet. She pulled out 2 glasses and a bottle of amber liquid. I shouldn't share my whiskey with crew, she said, pouring a small amount into each glass. But this isn't a normal situation. She handed one to Jack. What are you going to do? Jack took the glass but didn't drink. I don't know. I'm just a mechanic. I fix engines, not build relations with alien civilizations. Maybe that's exactly why it should be you, Captain Brown said thoughtfully. Diplomats play games. You just helped someone because they needed it. Seems like her people value that. Jack took a small sip of the whiskey, wincing at the burn. If I go, would you and the Wandering Star come too? She mentioned her people wanted to hire an escort vessel. The captain smiled. Well, I wasn't planning to retire yet, but with what they're offering to pay, the whole crew could buy their own ships. Her expression grew serious again. But this isn't about money. If these Vexari have been hiding from the rest of the galaxy for this long, their technology must be advanced. An alliance with them could be invaluable for humanity. Jack nodded, slowly. So you think I should accept? I think, Captain Brown said carefully, that opportunities like this come once in a lifetime, if that. Whatever you decide, the Wandering Star will back you up. 2 days later, Jack found himself back in Nixara's suite, giving her his answer. Allison stood beside him, having insisted on coming along once Jack told her the full story. I accept your invitation, Jack told Nixara, trying to keep his voice steady. Captain Brown has also agreed for the Wandering Star to serve as escort. Nixara's skin patterns pulsed with bright light. This is good news, Jack Morris. Your ship will be well compensated, and your crew will be the first humans to witness wonders few in the galaxy have seen. Allison stepped forward. Just one question, she said, eyeing the alien princess cautiously. Why Jack? Even if he did help you, there must be more to it than that. One of the guards made a sharp sound, but Nixara raised a hand to silence him. Your friend asks a fair question, she said to Jack. There is indeed more. She turned to Allison. For 10,000 years, my people have watched other species wage wars, exploit planets, and betray alliances. We withdrew from galactic affairs to preserve our ways. So what changed? Allison pressed. We have been observing humanity with particular interest, Nixara explained. You are young as a spacefaring species, yet you've established peaceful relations with many others despite your complicated history. You show great potential and great risk. She walked to Jack, her movements graceful and deliberate. My pilgrimage was not just a tradition, it was a test to see if any beings in the galaxy would offer help without seeking advantage. She smiled, an expression Jack was beginning to recognize. Jack passed that test. His actions speak for the better nature of humanity. So he's like your proof that humans aren't all bad? Allison asked. He is a bridge, Nixara corrected. The beginning of understanding between our peoples. 3 weeks later, the Wandering Star departed Nova Seattle under secrecy. The official logs listed a routine cargo run to the outer colonies, but the ship, carried no cargo, just its regular crew and a contingent of Vexari officials. Nixara traveled in a private cabin near the officers' quarters, while her guards maintained a watchful presence throughout the ship. Jack found his role changing rapidly. As the only human the Vexari seemed to fully trust, he often served as a go-between for the crew and their mysterious passengers. Captain Brown had named him Special Liaison, a title that felt too grand for a mechanic. "How do you understand their star charts?" Allison asked him one day, as they stood in the navigation room. On the main screen was a complex display of routes and markers that followed no human mapping system. "I just do," Jack admitted. Ever since his promotion, he'd found himself understanding things he'd never studied. It was as if the knowledge appeared in his mind when needed. "I think it has something to do with that royal stone thing she showed me." Allison shook her head. "This is wild. We're heading into completely uncharted space, following directions from aliens we just met because you fixed someone's breathing device." Jack laughed. "When you put it that way, it does sound crazy." Their journey took them far beyond the normal shipping lanes. After 2 weeks, they reached the edge of known space where human colonies gave way to unexplored systems. Nixara directed them to a small, unremarkable star that didn't even have a name in human star charts. "This system is protected," she explained on the bridge as they approached. "There are automated defenses that would destroy any ship that entered, without proper authorization." Captain Brown frowned. "Defenses, we can't detect anything." "That is the point," Nixara said simply. Following her instructions, the wandering star transmitted a signal on a frequency Jack had helped the communications officer adjust. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to shimmer before them. "What's happening?" demanded the captain as the instruments went haywire. "A gateway is opening," Nixara explained calmly. "The real path to Vexarix." The view screens showed a distortion forming, like a ripple in water but spanning thousands of kilometers. Through this ripple, they could see a different arrangement of stars. "A wormhole?" Allison whispered, her eyes wide. "A controlled fold in space," Nixara corrected. "One of many protections for our world." Following her guidance, the wandering star entered the distortion. The ship shuddered slightly, and for a brief moment, the lights flickered. Then they were through, emerging into a system that was definitely not where they had been moments before. Ahead of them, a fleet of ships appeared, their designs unlike anything in human space. They were elegant, with flowing lines that reminded Jack of the patterns on Nixara's skin, and they moved with a grace that suggested technology far beyond human capabilities. "The home fleet," Nixara announced proudly. "They will escort us the rest of the way." The Vexari ships surrounded the wandering star, not in a threatening way, but almost ceremonially. Through the viewports, the human crew watched in awe as lights pulsed between the alien vessels, some kind of communication they couldn't understand. "We should reach Vexarix in 6 hours, Nixara told Jack privately as they stood in the observation lounge. "Are you nervous?" Jack nodded, watching the alien ships glide around them. "Terrified," he admitted. "I'm about to be the first human, to set foot on a world no one on Earth even knows exists. What if I mess something up?" Nixara's skin patterns shifted to a calming blue. "You cannot fail, Jack Morris. You are simply being who you are. That is why you are here." "I'm still not convinced I'm the right person for this," Jack said. "During our journey, you have helped resolve 3 disputes between my guards and your crew. You have explained human customs to us and learned our ways in return. You have shown the same compassion to all, regardless of position." Nixara placed a hand on his arm. "These are the qualities of a bridge builder." The final approach to Vexarix took Jack's breath away. The planet was smaller than Earth, with 2 moons orbiting closely. Its surface was mostly covered in water, with land masses that glowed with lights even from space. As they drew closer, he could make out cities that seemed to be built into the natural landscape. Crystal structures rising from mountains, buildings that curved with shorelines, and floating platforms in the shallow seas. "It's beautiful," Jack said, staring at the view screen. "It is home," Nixara replied, "and soon you will walk upon its surface as our honored guest." As the wandering star entered orbit, escorted by the Vexari fleet, Jack felt the weight of history upon him. Whatever happened next would change not just his life, but potentially the future of human relations with a civilization they hadn't even known existed a month ago. And it had all started because he'd stopped to help someone in need. Jack stood at the bottom of the ramp leading from the wandering star, his heart pounding. The air of Vexarix felt different, lighter somehow, with a sweet scent he couldn't identify. The gravity was slightly less than Earth's, making each step feel bouncy and strange. Behind him stood Captain Brown and Allison, along with 5 other crew members who had been selected as the first landing party. They all wore their formal uniforms, pressed and perfect for this historic moment. Before them stretched a vast plaza, made of a material that looked like marble but shimmered with inner light. Thousands of Vexari had gathered, their skin patterns creating a stunning display of moving colors. At the far end of the plaza stood an elegant building with spires that seemed to be made of crystal. The assembly hall of the conclave, Nixara explained, now dressed in ceremonial robes that matched the flowing architecture around them. Our leaders await us there. As they walked across the plaza, Jack noticed the Vexari touching their foreheads, in a gesture of respect, not to Nixara, but to him. The realization made him even more nervous. "Why are they doing that?" he whispered to Nixara. "Word of the prophecy has spread," she replied quietly. "You are the foreigner of the bridge, the one who helps without seeking gain." "I'm just a mechanic," Jack insisted, uncomfortable with the attention. Nixara's skin patterns rippled with what Jack now recognized as amusement. Perhaps that is why the prophecy specified someone humble. The assembly hall was even more impressive. Inside, the ceiling soared hundreds of feet above them with light streaming through crystal panels in patterns that seemed to tell stories. Seated in a semicircle were 12 Vexari, their skin patterns more complex and bright than any Jack had seen before. "The High Conclave," Nixara explained. "Our ruling council." One Vexari rose, his patterns pulsing with deep blue and gold. "Princess Nixara Valsheen," he said in perfect standard, his voice deeper than Nixara's but with the same musical quality. "You have returned from your pilgrimage and brought outsiders to our sacred world. Explain yourself." Nixara stepped forward confidently. "High Counselor Zexer, honored members of the conclave, I have completed the pilgrimage as tradition demands. During this journey I faced true peril when assassins attacked my escort and left me stranded." Murmurs spread through the hall, and several counselors' skin patterns flashed with angry reds. "In my time of greatest need," Nixara continued, "when I was disguised as the lowest of beings, this human," she gestured to Jack, "offered help with no expectation of reward. He refused the royal sigil when offered as payment." She held up the carved stone which glowed brightly in her hand. "The sigil has recognized him as the foreigner of the bridge from our ancient texts. The time has come to end our isolation and join the galactic community, with humanity as our first allies." High Counselor Zexer's patterns darkened. "This is a grave decision based on one human's actions. Humans are known for their wars, their greed, their destructive tendencies, and for their compassion, their creativity, their ability to grow and learn." Nixara countered, "I have observed them closely during my journey. Yes, they have flaws, but they also have great potential." "I must object." Another counselor stood, his patterns flashing with sharp, aggressive reds. "We have remained hidden for 10,000 years for good reason. Opening our world to outsiders invites contamination of our ways." Nixara turned to Jack. "Would you speak to the conclave, Jack Morris? Tell them why humanity deserves this alliance." Jack swallowed hard, looking at the expectant faces of the council. He had prepared nothing, expecting to be merely an observer. He stepped forward. "I can't speak for all humans," he began, his voice steadier than he expected. "And I won't pretend we're perfect. We've made many mistakes as a species. We've fought wars, damaged planets, and sometimes been cruel to each other." High Counselor Zexer's patterns pulsed smugly, as if Jack was proving his point. "But that's not all we are," Jack continued. "We also build, heal, and create. We learn from our mistakes. Most importantly, we try to be better tomorrow than we are today. He looked at Nixara. When I helped Nixara, I didn't do it because I'm special. Many humans would have done the same. We believe in helping others not because of what they can give us, but because it's right. Fine words, Zexer said dismissively. But actions matter more than words. How can we trust humans not to exploit our knowledge, our resources? Before Jack could answer, alarms blared throughout the hall. Guards rushed in, their skin patterns flashing urgent warnings. The human ship has been sabotaged, one guard announced. Explosives placed in the engine room. Captain Brown stepped forward, her face pale. That's impossible. My crew has been with me the entire time. It was not your crew, one of the guards said. Our security systems detected movement in your ship while you were here. Someone accessed the engine room from outside. How much time do we have? Allison asked. The devices are set to detonate in 15 minutes, the guard replied. Jack turned to Nixara. Let me go. I know that ship better than anyone. I might be able to disarm them. It is too dangerous, she protested. There's no time to argue, Jack insisted. If that ship explodes here, what will happen to our chance for peace? Nixara nodded grimly. I will come with you. Racing back to the Wandering Star, Jack and Nixara were joined by Allison and 2 Vexari security officers. When they reached the engine room, Jack's heart sank. Attached to the main power core were 5 devices he didn't recognize, blinking with countdown displays. These aren't human-made, he said, examining one carefully without touching it. No, said one of the Vexari guards. These are Vexari weapons. Who would do this? Allison asked. Those who fear change, Nixara said grimly. Can you disarm them, Jack? Jack studied the devices, his mind racing. Strangely, as he looked at the alien technology, he began to understand how it worked. The same way he'd been gaining insights about machines since meeting Nixara. I think so, he said. But we need to work fast. With 7 minutes remaining, Jack directed the others in a careful disarming process. The Vexari technology was complex, but somehow familiar to him now. As they removed the last device with just 2 minutes to spare, Jack noticed a small symbol etched into its base. That's Counselor Zexer's housemark, Nixara said, her patterns flashing with anger and betrayal. He planned to destroy your ship and blame it on human carelessness. When they returned to the assembly hall with the disarmed bombs, chaos erupted. Zexer denied all involvement, but the evidence was clear. Guards took him away while the remaining counselors apologized profusely to the humans. This changes everything, the eldest counselor said, her patterns glowing with a soft, wise light. Not only did you help our princess, Jack Morris, but you have now saved us from a terrible mistake. Zexer would have started a war before we even had a chance for peace. 3 days later, Jack stood beside Nixara in the same hall, but this time it was filled with not just Vexari, but also officials from Earth who had been urgently summoned. News of the hidden civilization had spread through human space, like wildfire. Nixara, now officially confirmed as voice of the conclave, following her successful pilgrimage, addressed the gathered representatives from both species. Today marks a new chapter in galactic history, she announced, her voice carrying through the hall. The Vexari conclave emerges from isolation to establish formal relations with humanity first, before reaching out to the wider galactic community. She turned to Jack, who was dressed in a new uniform marking his position as the first human ambassador to Vexarix. And we owe this bridge between our peoples to one human who showed kindness when it was needed most. Later, in a quiet moment before the formal diplomatic proceedings began, Nixara took Jack to a small garden overlooking the Crystal City. There is something I never told you, she said, pulling out the royal sigil. This was not just a way to identify me. It was a test. A test? Jack asked. Yes. Had you taken it as payment, it would have marked you as someone who helps for personal gain. She smiled. Your refusal proved your true character. That is why the sigil has been sharing knowledge with you, why you suddenly understood machines better, why you could disarm our weapons. Jack looked out at the beautiful alien world that was now his home, at least for the diplomatic mission. All this because I helped someone who seemed to need it. Nixara's patterns shifted to a deep, contented blue. Small acts of kindness can change the universe, Jack Morris. Never doubt that. Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly. Humans had formed an alliance with the legendary Vexari, whose advanced technology would transform interstellar travel, medicine, and energy production. Every major power scrambled to establish connections with Earth, hoping to benefit from this new relationship. And at the center of it all was Jack Morris, once a simple mechanic who had stopped to help a stranger, a decision that had changed the course of galactic history. In the years that followed, whenever Jack was introduced at diplomatic functions as the bridge builder, or the human who united two worlds, he would smile and say the same thing. I just helped someone who needed it. Anyone would have done the same.